guys, Ben Rasmussen here with Quality Edge. I cover Michigan as a sales territory, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Vesta. Vesta is our new steel plank siding panel. Kind of gives you that nickel gap shiplap look. We've launched it with 4 colors in wood grains. Each wood grain family has 6 panels that you'll be able to see. We also have 8 new colors that are in painted colors. We have vertical installation and horizontal installation, as you can see on the house here. And I'm here with our lead engineer and designer, Mark, who put the whole Vesta program here together today. What Mark's going to hopefully walk us through is a couple tips and tricks around the install of Vesta. And today we get to play Mark's sandbox, which is around the back of our test house here. And so Mark, if you want to take it over from here, that'd be great.
All right, let's head to the back and we'll check out the setups that we got to go over all the parts and pieces. Around the corner here while I'm walking is where we do a lot of our R&D, and a lot of our test installs, and also contractor training to get people familiar with what we have. So we'll start with this side. So what we'll do is I'll just quickly go over some of the parts and pieces that we're going to go over. I've just picked out the ones that are kind of unique to Vesta. So I'm not going to train you how to be a sider, but I'm going to help show you like the little unique parts and pieces that make it a little bit different. We've got our sales pack, contractor pack here, where it has all the different accessories that you would need for the job. They're all in little cut pieces here. So they're great little samples to talk with the homeowner or with different builders and stuff. So what we're going to go over today is we're going to go over the starter strip and what makes it different. So it's just a little J-hook style. I'll grab a piece here when we're close and kind of see. This one is for, I think it's silver lining, but this is a color match, and we'll show that on the wall. We're also going to go over our inside corner block. We've got 2 different methods of installation using this guy. Here's a wood grain version. And then on top of that, we're going to go over our how do you finish or end a panel, and what that is here is a piece of support trim that goes inside that J. And you're making a utility trim out of 2 different pieces. This pinches and holds the panel. When you rip it down, wherever that lands, when you end your last row of siding. And we'll jump over here. We'll do some quick fasteners. So with our fasteners, we're doing testing with either the regular galvanized roofing nail. You're going to want to use probably a minimum of a 1.5 inches. And then we've got here, this one in particular would be for steel studs because it's a drill point. But you just want to make sure that you get a lath screw or modified truss screw. And we've got all of the details on the fastening and our install instructions. So here, one of the most important things to know with this to help with some stuff we've been seeing on the job site is I'll grab a piece here. Is when you're hanging, and I use the word hanging, when you're hanging your steel siding, you want to make sure that you leave here about 1/8 to 3/16 behind that fastener head so you allow it to float. So what this does is if you have any inconsistencies in the wall going along, this will straighten it out. This is a pretty robust, pretty stout panel. It's pretty firm, so it'll straighten out a wall real easy. The next thing I want to talk about briefly here is what do we use to cut the material with. So you're going to want to use a steel cutting saw blade, and what you're going to look for on it, which they have another fancy word for it, is you're going to want to make sure that you've got a ferrous metal cutting blade. So ferrous is just a fancy way to say steel, carbon steel. You would not want to use this blade on aluminum just because of the teeth and the design. You're also going to want to try to use the larger diameter. Tends to last a lot longer. So you get into the 7-inch family and that one will burn up a lot quicker. But you also want to make sure here that you get as much teeth as you can for that size or that diameter blade. Just because the metal's so thin, and when you go to cut, and we use this on a sliding miter saw. So when you go to cut, you don't want to plunge down in the middle of it. You want to start off to the side and then push your way through. So that's one unique thing. Definitely got to get a good metal cutting saw, a couple per job. Let the saw do the work. Don't shove it through. Kind of watch your your cut edge here, make sure that it doesn't throw a big burr. A little bit of a burr just happens, but you just want to make sure you don't get a big one and it's not getting discolored, because that'll let you know the life of the blade and where you're at. We talked about the installation instructions that you can find online. We also have a bunch of YouTube videos. I think we've got 8 or 9 of them up right now. And if you're seeing anything with those videos or these instructions that you want to learn more of, just give us an email or a shout, and we'll make sure that we make a video for you to help explain some of the nuances of it. Here in front, I've just got a couple of the tools that I use to put this up. People debate. I like to use my offset snips for left and rights if I'm doing intricate cuts versus just a straight. This piece here, this is a really nice tool. It just saves a ton of time for ripping down panels. It's got carbide teeth that you can change out. And we even use this here in our manufacturing processes when we're cutting large coils. It's a really good one. I use that one here when I rip down this panel. When I cut the one out there. I'll get into this one a little bit later. This is how to replace a panel after it's been installed. But we'll start out here with our starter strip. Now I've got this one mounted high just so we can see it. But one key thing to note is that our starter strip here is a color matched starter strip. Not like what's with every other product where it's just a mill. This one we chose to make it color matched because depending on the installation you can see it. We did try to do some dark neutrals or some other ones that would be more universal, but in the end, it's just something that you're going to see, and you're going to want to have a color match. So the installation of this is pretty straightforward. Make sure you've got this, shim it out to make sure you take away any waves of the wall, but install is pretty simple. It's just down and you're in. For most siders, you already know that this is the most important step of the house, or one of the most important steps is you want to make sure that you get this parallel to the eave edge. And if you need to make up any compensations, this is where you got to do it. But this is going to set the stage for the rest of the field of panels. Again, I'll just put this together, in, lock, and then this is where you fasten it. I just got these little screws here to hold it up.
So Mark, we're getting a question about what color is that you're color matching?
This one is autumn thistle. So this is one of our wood grains. And again, so we got autumn thistle panel and autumn thistle accessories. It's kind of hard to see it, but this is an actual wood grain. It's just one of the, and this we did talk about too, where, and I'll grab that right now. In each one of these panels, there's actually a number. So here you can see number 1. I grabbed one of our other colors, our gilded grain. But this one has got a number on the panel which designates which wood grain print it is. So you'll find in each box there's 6. And I'll get into this in more detail later when I get to the field of panels over here. But very good question. Good question. Keep questions coming. The next accessory is our corner post. So here I've got a little cutaway so we can kind of see how it interfaces. So this is a very slim, small corner post. And we're trying to keep with the design and the theme of this modern panel to keep it real minimalistic. But our corner post right now only has one nailing flange. And the install for this is you want to take a scrap piece of material. I've already got one screw sunk here and I've got it set. So what I did here is I put it in way inside that J, the one opposite of the nailing flange, and it sets my distance away from the wall this direction. So pull it in there, hold it. I tend to put it on the right side because I'm right-handed, and I'll use my driver bit. It just makes it easier for me. So I'll set this one, and then I'll slide down, and then I'll come here, set my next fastener, slide down again, use my other next fastener. What this does, because it doesn't have 2 nailing flanges, you're using that to set the gap distance. You could also use this as a nice starter, just because it does have one nailing flange. Let's say if you had a different color, or I don't say color, but different material, you can grab this, put this against tight, and then it's a nice looking J channel. Next we'll go over here to the vertical installation and some of the details of that. So over here, we've got our vertical install. Started with what we're using here is a drip cap. So this is our color match drip cap. Usually goes above windows and doors. But we're using this here as a bottom cap. Sometimes they refer to this part as like a rat guard. what it does is it guards the bottom of the panel, and I'll put this here so you can kind of see it. So it keeps animals, bugs, whatnot from making nests and stuff inside there. So down here we've got it installed. I use that as a starter. I could have put just a little bit of a gap down here to let some airflow underneath that. And what we're doing here is we're starting this vertical panel without a starter strip. So we're taking this panel, putting it inside of the J-channel, and then what I do, let me set this up here a sec. Get this out of my way. Is when I'm installing this panel, this first one, I'm going to take my square here, or my level, and I'm going to put it against the nailing flange, and I'm just going to make sure that I set my angle to make sure that I'm not angled forward or back. So I get that in the middle of the bubble, and then I'll do maybe, during the installations I've done, maybe five or six rows, and then I'll come back and I'll check to make sure that it's not getting off skew as you're going down the wall. A nice little tip for that. And you can also seam your vertical runs, but what you really need to keep track of is when you're installing here, you want to make sure that you're overlapping the one below. So here I'm coming together and I'm overlapping. And then what I want to do too also is I want to pull this up maybe a 1/16 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to put my fastener right at the top of that. So what's it going to do? I'm going to hang on that fastener and it'll keep it from moving it down. And then the next corresponding ones I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in the center of the slot to allow for expansion and contraction. We'll move to our inside corner. So here we're showing a couple different options. We've got our inside corner block with J-channel on either side. So with the inside corner block, I know it's an extra piece. A lot of guys like to use just 2 double J's or 1 J with some trim coaling on there. But what this does in the installations I've done so far is it really squares up that inside corner wall, and it makes the J-channel, you know, you can kind of get your gaps where you're following the wall. The J-channel isn't really all that great for that, but when you put that inside corner block on there, it really straightens it up. It gives it a nice clean edge. So down at the bottom, we've got 2 J's in a block. And then above that, on the left side, what we're showing here is if you don't like the look of J-channel, we've got a nice clean cut edge here, and we just got that tight up against the corner. So something real similar to what I did over here is I'll take that first fastener, nail, screw, and I'll put it way to the right of the slot so that that panel doesn't walk away during the expansion and contraction cycles. And again, as I'm doing the rest of the panel, I'm putting the fasteners inside the middle of that elongated slot. So here, I need to get this prepped for the next set. But this is how you finish your panel, or your last run. So I got that ready for next, but let's come right over here a minute. So this is where I'm going to show how we're putting up panels. One trick that I've learned over doing a lot of the installations is, setting up this measurement, and what I like to do is I'll measure from the outside of the J-channel, and what works out really well, because we've got about a 1/2 inch overlap here, is I'll measure, let's say roughly, to where this edge is, and this is a pre-notched edge, so I'll measure right to that nailing flange there, and I've got, let's just call it 22 and just go 3/4. You could go just a little bit longer, but then I've got this piece here to where I cut that 22 and 3/4, the overall length. And then what happens is when you go to install, you're going to want to start here, pull that back just a little bit, get it in the side here. So now we're as tight as it absolutely can be inside this J-channel, and we're just past the overlap. So what this overlap does is it interlocks together. So what you want to do then is move this over to where you have about an 1/8 inch gap here, but we still have roughly about a 1/4 inch on the other side inside this J-channel. Now this is a smaller panel, so I'd probably put 2 fasteners here. But that's the little trick for this one. And then one thing that we didn't go over, I already kind of talked about, you know, our colors and our numbering sequence. And again, there's 6 different wood grain panels that make up one color. So as you're installing, they're numbered and they're pre-mixed in the box. And theoretically, they're pre-mixed ascending. So you could just put them up 1 through 6, 1 through 6, but in practice, what just works out is you just got to get back and you're looking at the color mix that you're doing. It's a kind of lot, I like to use an analogy of like putting hardwood floor down. But it's real similar to that because how you're mixing it up. You just really don't want to get a bunch of 1s by 1s, 2s by 2s, or 3s by 3s. If it does happen, it's kind of hard to see. What I've got in the upper right is I've got 2 number 3s. But they're just hitting each other, but still, it still looks good. But what you don't want is to have more than a couple. And we'll go to the next accessory, the support trim. You see me kind of take this guy out, but now we're going to put it back in. So what I like to do for measurement is I'll measure from the top of this J channel to the inside right there of that receiving lock. So if I measure that, I believe that one was about 4 1/4. So I'll measure there to right there. Yep, 4 1/4. And then I'll transfer that dimension over here to this piece that I already got ripped down. But when I go to do that, I'm going to make sure I catch that bottom little leg right here. And I'll pass that to that. You can see I'm just a little shy of 4 1/4. But that works out well. And so before I go to get that in there, because it's kind of tough to get that inside here. So before I do that, I'll make sure I didn't cut it too short. I've been on a couple job sites where, well, most of them anyways, this isn't typically parallel down the whole length of the house, and sometimes you've got to skew your dimensions to be able to get it to look right. So I'll just do this to make sure that I don't see that I've got plenty of engagement inside. So it's locked in, all right, I'm feeling you good here, we got good engagement, all right, should work. So I'll pull that out, and starting this is a little bit of a trick. But what you got to do is you kind of got to work it like a zipper effect. And again, what I'm doing with these 2 pieces is I'm pretty much making a utility trim. And this part down below is just supporting the piece that I ripped down. And it just keeps it level or parallel with the rest of the wall. So I'll get this guy in here. Work it in. And this one you want to be careful when you're cutting. You want to make sure that when you're ripping this one down that you don't put any wave into the panel, because that could still be in this panel when you go to install it. So just make sure you've got a good clean cut. And before I lock it in, I'm going to make sure I'm sliding it down all the way to the end. So I'm tight inside that inside corner lock. And I'll push it up inside the lock. And I got to get my gloves off here because I don't have any grip. Then I'll just pull it down. Now this one I'm just showing a display. I'm going to be taking this out in and out quite a bit to show other builders. But before I would go put this piece in, it's a good idea to put some construction adhesive inside this lock right here. So that way when you set it, now again this is pretty tight. This doesn't really want to go anywhere, but that helps it keep it locked for any kind of anything that would ever happen. So we did our inside corner block, we did a few of the panels, and we've got our last piece over here, which is, I think my gloves on, this is a sharp metal. Gloves are a pretty good idea when you're working with a lot of the sheet metal because you can work with it all day long and never really cut yourself until you do. And if you do, it typically does a pretty good cut. Alright, so this one, I've got it where it really took a good hit. I nailed it with a hammer, and I took the end of my claw hammer and just dug it into there, but this is simulating if a skid steer blows right into your brand new siding if you put it up. But what you're going to want to do is measure down about 1.5 to 2 inches. And for this one I used our little shear guy here. Peeled it back, went along, and we can remove our bottom piece. Put this over here. And I I've got a pre-cut one already staged. Now this is the hardest part of the whole job, is to get this one made. So what you need to do for this, and I already showed this in the previous session here, but you're going to want to cut as close as you can to this little pre-notch edge. So this is a stock edge here. But that little pre-notch piece there is about where you want to be. You want to be as close as you can to that nailing flange. Because what we're going to do is we're going to make a piece here that's going to slide in between those two remaining parts. So one thing you don't want to do, which I was showing here before, is when you go to cut this, you want to refrain from going all the way through, because if you go all the way through like I did here, it makes a dent. And I got a couple of them on there. But you can kind of, you know, tin knocker, you can move that, you can lay that back down. It's just, you don't want to have to do that. So as you're cutting through, you just want to make sure you don't go all the way through with your shear. So now to install this guy, you're going to want to lay up your adhesive up here before you go to put it on.
Hey Mark, we got another question about adhesive, and
Sure.
a question as to whether it will cause any oil canning.
Not typically. What you want to use is, well, I like to use a material, it's for snow guards. So it's a elastic, it still has that pliability to it, so where it doesn't harden to a rock. So it allows for movement and expansion and contraction. So typically when you've got this piece here, because what I'm going to do is this is going to turn into one part again. But this already is hung to where this panel is floating. It's a really good question too, because if this is tight, one, you'll see all the waves in this wall. This is a brand new wall, so this is pretty nice. But going over an old existing wall, you could have some waves. This one, you're essentially taking a two-piece panel and making it into one again. So no, you shouldn't have any oil canning with your adhesive. The material that I like to use is called, it's from Surebond. I think it's SB190. Now again, that's more designed for snow stops, but it's designed to stick to Kynar finishes. And I figure if it can hold a snow guard on or snow stop, it's definitely good for this. Plus it's clear. If you have any squeeze out, you don't have to necessarily worry about it as much. But for this guy, once you've got this cut, and you can see again here where I've got it to where what we're going to try to replicate, we're going to pinch this guy up in there. So I'm going to start on the side over here. And I'm just going to work it in. And it just takes a little bit of time. You just have to be patient with it. And once you start it, it really wants to find its way back in the panel. And I'm just pushing here, getting that to install. You can hear it kind of snap in. Here we go. So versus taking down a whole row of panels to get to where your bad one is, now here, snap this in. Push on it. And it's really, it's almost impossible to see that that was the replaced panel. I think we covered most of the parts and pieces. This is kind of like one of the more tougher, detailed sections of this little training session. But any other questions anybody has? Feel free to type them in. Give you a minute. Nothing? Nothing? All right. Well, I want to do a special shout out or thanks at least to the siding and the crews that I worked with the development of this. Thanks for letting me come out and learn the trade. It's been a really good product for us, and we've been really getting a lot of commercial, which has been kind of our new one. We get a lot of commercial enthusiasm with this one.
Good. No, that's great. So I want to say thanks to Mark, and as you guys have questions or things that you might want to reach back out to us, Mark and I would love to help. And I know I saw Dan even responding on some of the comments before, but if you guys have questions, marketing@qualityedge.com. We'd love to help you funnel those questions back to the right people. And if you've got guys in your market that are looking for more specific questions, we'd love to help. And make sure that you guys are ordering all the brochures and books that you need to help sell in the home or with your contractors. But with that, I think we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
Without any further questions, unless Katie, who's behind the camera, wants to show her face or say any questions, we'll end it right there.
We should probably have questions. Ask for Katie to come on the other side. No, we're done.